like I said before, just some house cleaning. So, but, and I know, you know, Amanda, that the city council meetings are available on YouTube and on the city website. If you click on the link there, it'll take you to the Zoom meeting, I believe. So that's always an option. But no, I like, I think it's a good idea to recap the city council meetings because it gives you something to talk about. But the part I like is when people ask questions. Like Susie received a question for us to talk about the signalization at the intersection next to Furber Plaza. You know, why we put in a light in there. And at some point during the meeting, I'm going to ask our city manager to take that a little further, how we pay for it, when we started collecting the impact fees, and why we even do it. And then also later, I'm going to ask Chief Ferguson to just give us an update on what's new in the department and what's going on in his arena. So I don't know if that answered your question, but yeah, that I think it's a great idea. It gives us
that's perfect. Yeah.
But I like the casual back and forth conversations. That I think that's more beneficial than having it structured. So
I think so too.
I think it'll be a really good idea to have a conversation with Jason, since you know he is
sure.
his own unique personality, and this is, I believe, his first time being mayor, and he may have some, you know, visions and goals and things he wants to talk about. So, you know, I think the format can always evolve. And I realize he's a full-time, you know, worker, and I don't know about Saturdays, but certainly we can look and see if there's a better time that works for him, so we can have him attend more often. And I think this is something that can just evolve. Yeah. So.
And he's committed to continuing the program. And as I shared with him, you know, I'm here to step in as much as he needs me to make sure that the program continues. And I know staff is also available. And that's why when we first structured this, Susie and I talked about what should we call it, Coffee with the Mayor. And we both kind of agreed it should be Coffee with the Mayor and Friends, because the mayor might not always be able to make it. And maybe a council member won't be able to make it, but at some point, somebody from the city staff will be here. So, and hopefully Vice Mayor Cruz will join us as well. So.
Well, I'd like to add that, you know, we're doing Coffee with the Mayor on Zoom, but it would be just as exciting, or even more so, if things were opened up and we could actually meet someplace and talk in person, and, you know, be able to continue that even then. I think it's an excellent idea, and I appreciate your support in keeping it going, Gus, because I think it's a great idea. And I think that eventually, like I said, with more invitations, we might get more interest, and as the program evolves, we might cover more information. So yeah. I think it's great. Thank you.
Well, I long for those days when we can start gathering again. There's nothing, you know, I really hate having our city council meetings on Zoom. I just think we miss something when we don't see people there and see them engaged with the council in person. So.
I agree.
Well, yes. Susie, Melanie, what do you think? Should we get started, or?
I think we should go ahead and get started.
Okay, good. Well, as I said last night, we had a fairly light agenda. Most of the items were on the consent calendar, but the one that I wanted to just talk about for a minute is the item number 4 on the consent calendar. We had that item pulled because we just wanted to make sure that the community understood that we're in the process of dividing up the Times Square property. And the one property that we have left is the one down by Hillsburg Avenue and Cloverdale Boulevard, the southern one. And we've entered into an exclusive development agreement with Integrated Community Development. Those are the folks that built the Cloverdale family apartments. And, you know, if you've ever toured that facility, I'm sure you would agree with me that It is fantastic the way they designed that and the way it's maintained. So they would like to explore the possibilities of developing a project there on the corner. It is designed and zoned for that type of housing, high density, transit oriented. So personally, this council member is excited to enter into that agreement because, like I said, they've done an excellent job on the Cloverdale family apartments. And I could see why they wanted to execute an exclusive agreement. I mean, no developer likes to spend a lot of money designing a project and then bringing it to the city council or the city and us saying, hey, we already sold the lot. So we're kind of giving them some assurances that we're going to hold it and talk only with them. We have no idea what it's going to look like, how many units they're looking to build. All that's down the road. All we agreed to last night was we're only going to talk to them about it till a certain drop dead date where they bring something to the table or we put it back out there again.
Hey, Gus?
David? Yes.
I have a question for you in regards to that property. Is that the same property that Alexander Valley Healthcare has had hopes of purchasing to build a newer facility?
Yes, they purchased half of it. Now we're talking about
already purchased?
Well, we're in the process of still negotiating that, but there's two developable parcels on that site. And I'm talking about the one further down on the southern end. Alexander Valley Medical is more off of Citrus Fair Drive. So
that has already been a commitment made, or that is still in negotiation?
The Alexander Valley Medical?
Right.
We're still negotiating with them. It's not a final deal yet. I'm going to ask David to talk a little bit more about that if he'd like to. So
okay.
I had just a comment, Gus. I thank you for the clarification on Article 4 from last night, because when the only question I had last night, which I couldn't ask, was why we were talking to anybody exclusively, and you've just answered that question. I think that's the biggest thing that hit me last night was why are we only talking to one developer exclusively? And of course, maybe other people had that question as well, but I thank you for putting that out there, because that really did clear it up for me. I mean, not that I'm only one person, but now I understand.
Well, Alan, you always have my phone number to call me. So, but
yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no, they just don't want to spend a lot of money in design work and then find that it can't come to fruition. So
I understand. Yeah, understood. But I just wanted to thank you for that.
David?
Councilmember Wolter, thank you for the opportunity to speak. And of course, as city managers do, we usually offer a lot of information, and council member is always great at making it very succinct. So just a little bit of background on the Times Square property. It's a property that was purchased by our former redevelopment agency and is now owned by what's called the Cloverdale Successor Agency. And that's the agency that was designated to take former redevelopment properties when former Governor Brown dissolved redevelopment. So it's a little complicated. And the underlying requirement for the city is that the property be utilized for housing. However, there are allowed alternative uses, and of course, one of those uses is what you mentioned, Melanie, was a planned wellness facility by Alexander Valley Healthcare. So, what the city did was divide the property into three lots, and we call them Lot A, B, and C. Lot A is the property that was the subject of the council's consideration last night for what we called an exclusive negotiating agreement with integrated community development to develop affordable housing on Lot A. Lot B we continue to negotiate with Alexander Valley Healthcare on what are kind of the next steps, a development agreement and a purchase and sale agreement. We've already executed the purchase and sale agreement, and we're just in the process of finalizing a draft development agreement that would set forth the requirements for future development of Lot B. Just for reference, Lot C includes the proposed extension of Washington Street, connecting Citrus Fair Drive to Healdsburg Avenue. So in essence, you'd have kind of a square surrounded by public streets. And in addition to the extension of Washington Street, which council has emphasized is really important, there is a small parcel adjacent to, not a parcel, but a portion of Lot C proposed for a future skate park. Now that's still in very preliminary conversations and discussions with council. We prepared a concept design, but the school district has indicated that they have some concerns because of the adjacency to Washington School. But back to the exclusive negotiating agreement, this doesn't guarantee development of Lot A. It's really, again, as Councilmember Wolter indicated, that we're going to work in good faith with the developer to come up with a proposed development plan for the property. Any development plan has to go through all the traditional processes of design review and approval. So that usually means there's a public hearing at the Planning Commission, and ultimately in this particular project would be approved if it gets to that point by the City Council. So this is just the start, and again, it's an indication that the city's willing to partner with integrated community development on the future development of that portion of the property. And again, it kind of fits with the underlying designation of the property that was intended to be for affordable housing. And as Councilmember Wolter indicated, integrated community development and their nonprofit partner developed Cloverdale Family Apartments. I think they did a really nice job. It's a kind of a neat project, not only from the use of the property, but it's what's called the zero net energy building. It's actually one, I think, of only there's only one building in Sonoma County that has zero net energy, and we have it in Cloverdale. So it's kind of an interesting fact about that project. They do a lot to reduce energy usage, to keep the rents down, to reduce utility costs for its residents. So it's pretty interesting. Yeah. So we will count what the action taken last night by council was to authorize me to execute that agreement with integrated community development, and then we'll start that process and working with them on some layouts and designs and look at what future development of that parcel might look like.
One of the things as a city council, I think that we're very aware of, even, well, I shouldn't say even after we sell the parcels, but we want to control what goes on that Times Square property. I mean, that's the entrance point to Cloverdale. So I know we've entered into, and I don't know what the legal language is, but what it boils down to is, if for some reason Alexander Valley Medical purchases the property and they can't, a year from now or 2 years from now, they decide they just can't do it, we have the right to buy that property back. We don't want them selling it to just anyone, and next thing you know, we got a used car lot on the corner there. So we're trying to control that property as much as we can as far as how it's developed. And so, yeah, I really feel important about that, very strongly about that. And just backing up to the Cloverdale Family Apartments, I know this sounds silly, little things in life amaze me, but of the units that they have there, and Dave, I think there's 30 some odd units. There's one hot water heater for all of them. And it's a massive hot water heater, and the hot water just constantly circles through the hot water pipe. So if you're in your apartment and you turn it on, the hot water is already there. I just think, and the air conditioning is similar to that as well. It's one big duct system. So little things like that excite me, and that's how it gets the classification that David said they had. Zero, what was it?
Zero net energy.
Yeah, so that's an ideal project. I'd love to see another one like that on the corner. So designed properly, of course. So any other questions about Times Square or what's going on there? Okay.
Gus, do you have any idea, or David, any idea how many apartments that would be if this plan does go as according to plan? How many apartments, new apartments that would be, and I guess low-income housing?
So the lot A is about 1.5 acres. Based on the allowable density in the zoning ordinance of 20 units per acre, they could potentially develop around about 30 units. And that pretty closely mirrors what the Cloverdale Family Apartments project is. I think that one it's either 30 or 32. I can't remember the exact number of units, but it would be almost identical. And what we refer to it as is affordable housing. It's kind of the name we call.
Thank you. That's a much better term.
The type of housing that their nonprofit partner usually develops. And the reason we say affordable is there's these sub designations of housing, and some are designated for very low income, some can be low income, some can be moderate income. So that's why we call it affordable housing, because the unit mix, it usually is spread amongst those different affordable categories.
Thank you.
And we don't know what their mix would be yet, because we haven't got to that stage.
Al?
I have a question regarding the skate park that you guys are trying to put in there, or talking about putting in there. Is that okay to switch to that right now?
Yeah, please. It's open conversation.
I'm curious about how that's coming together, because I remember talking to the mayor probably 3 or 4 years ago. It wasn't you, Gus, but it was somebody else who asked me to come up and talk with the council members about the skate park, because I was caretaking the skate park in Cloverdale for the last 20 years, and getting some ideas on how that could actually be done, and how we maintain the one in Healdsburg so clean and so nice for 20 years. And just at that point, I'm not sure they even knew where they were going to put it. But do you have a committee of people that are literally working on this, or is that, I'd just like to know more about it, see how you guys are designing that, and just out of curiosity, just because of my experience with that.
Councilmember, you'd like me to respond? It looks like Gus's screen is frozen, so I'll go ahead and answer the question, and I'm sure Councilmember Wolter will chime in. The city did convene a design group, a design firm. Interesting name. The name of the firm is called Spawn Ranch. They're a fairly well-known skate park designer. We hired them to work with a community group. We held, I think there were 3 design meetings that were at the time open to the public to attend. And we really were trying to get the youth involved in the design process, to kind of capture their perspective on the kind of skate park, we call skate park amenities that they'd like to see. And boy, they have some really interesting names for some of the things that they like to see at the skate park. And so the design actually was kind of designed collectively with the help of our professional consultant. with input from the community. And again, it's a fairly small site. It was just a little over 10,000 square feet, and it's a little vacant piece of property that is just north of Cloverdale Family Apartments, adjacent to Washington School, and it kind of fit in where the extension of Washington Street would extend into Citrus Fair Drive. So it was kind of tucked in there. And we do have a concept design, Al, and that's available. I can certainly send you a copy if you'd like to take a look at it.
Yeah, I'd like to see it. I didn't hear anything else after we met. So
yeah,
that's exciting for the kids.
Absolutely.
Yes, please, Darlene. You're still on mute.
That was probably one of the city council meetings that I attended, and I thought it was so wonderfully involving the youth in terms of their talking about how they appreciated what was being done in that small space, that it's going to allow them to do the kinds of skating that they were looking forward to. And then at the end, Washington had some objection because it was going to be on the path to their gym, and they didn't like that concept. And Jason Turner was going to meet with them, and I guess a year passes and nothing has developed, it sounds like. It's sad because I know the youth has been looking for some activity here in our community that seems to be focused on seniors. Anyway.
Yeah, I know some of those youth, they skate at Healdsburg. So
I drive by that so often, and it is so well populated. And as you said, it's clean, it's well attended, it's enjoyed, and we don't seem to make much progress with our own. My 2 cents.
Well, thanks, Darlene. Oh.
Okay, Gus.
Okay, I think I'm back now.
Okay, good.
There you are.
I just talked to our IT people, and John told me that they boosted the signal here in the council chambers, and I really don't think they did, but anyhow. I heard everything that you said, and one of the things, of course, we always try and do is be a good neighbor, and we're still talking with the school district about their concerns about locating the skateboard park there. This council member is a firm believer that when we do a new development and we have a recreational area or a park put in there, there should be some type of skateboard park included. It doesn't have to be a grand one, just a couple little jumps for the kids. I don't think that the younger kids should have to come from South Cloverdale Boulevard all the way up to the middle of the town to use the skateboard park. Yes, it'll be a bigger one, it'll be a better one that they have in their neighborhood. But I just think when a housing development is built and we look at the parks and the recreations, there needs to be some type of a skateboard feature within that design. So. Al, did you have another question or?
No, I just wanted to get the background on it and see where it was at and offer any assistance if I can in moving that forward. I think it's a great idea. And like Darlene said, it has been extremely popular, even in this shelter in place, although we've had to shut it a couple of times.
Yeah.
And the city has stopped the caretakership, and they've tried to take that over themselves. So it's not quite as clean as it used to be. But yeah, just going forward, I was interested in if I could be helpful, I'd be happy to.
Well, I was always, and I still am impressed with that facility in Healdsburg. It's neat, it's clean. There's no graffiti. I don't know if you've ever had a problem with that, but they just keep it really looking nice. So.
Yeah, I was the caretaker for the last 20 years, like I said, since it opened. And keeping graffiti out of there was one of my main goals, and keeping it clean was one of my main goals. And really that was based on my relationship with the kids that were there, and if there was any tagging that happened, then I would automatically close the park until it was cleaned up. And the kids don't like it closed, so they police themselves.
Yep. Well, let's see, then why don't we move on to another topic or the big focus point at last night's council meeting was the assignments of subcommittees. And we, the beginning of every year, the city manager, David, passes out a wish list of which subcommittees the council members would like to serve on. And you prioritize those 1 through, I think we have 5 or 6 subcommittees. And then he does his magic with the matrix and comes back with suggestions. And one of the things we try and do is we try and rotate who sits on that subcommittee so that we have an individual council member from last year and a new one for the upcoming year. So there's kind of like some corporate memory within that subcommittee, and yet there's a new council member who is going to be kind of learning what that subcommittee is all about. So last night, and David, I apologize, I don't have the list, and I'm not even so sure it's important that we share with you which council members are on the subcommittees because it's not finalized yet. We've given direction to staff, and staff is going to bring back the resolution assigning those subcommittees. But yeah, I other than the fact that we talked about it and we gave direction to staff, there's not much to say about that unless I'm missing something, David.
Councilmember Walter, I think you covered it. You know, just again for background, there are five subcommittees that the council participates in. Those 5 subcommittees are finance, admin, and police, public works, planning and sustainability, and then there are 2 joint city subcommittees, one with the fire district and one with the school district. So those are the 5 subcommittees. And the council evenly distributed their workload. Each council member sits on 2 of the 5 subcommittees, and each council member gets to chair one of the 2 subcommittees that they sit on. They have kind of a rotating meeting schedule depending on which subcommittee is meeting. The finance, admin, and police subcommittee tends to meet monthly, whereas the joint city school and joint city fire tend to meet less often. Sometimes it's by every other month or even quarterly, just depending on the needs and the issues. And likewise, planning and sustainability and public works meet every other month. And if I can kind of promote those subcommittees, there's a lot of work done at the subcommittee level on behalf of the council. And it's a tremendous opportunity for the community to plug in and participate in those subcommittees. They all have agendas and they're all open to the public. And there's just a lot of important work that is getting done by the subcommittees. And I'd encourage you, if you haven't already, to sign up and get copies of those agendas. And if you feel inclined, participate in those meetings, because I think it's really valuable. And I think public input is valuable for the subcommittees as well.
And if I'm not mistaken, if you've already signed up for notifications, you should get a notification that the agenda is on the city website. So you can actually see what the agenda is going to be, and then you can follow it up with reviewing the minutes once they're posted. So subcommittees, I really enjoy the subcommittee. I think people that come and address the subcommittees are less impaired by the fear of speaking in public, because it's a small group and it's only 2 council members and we're there to listen, really. So it's good. David, did you want to chat a little bit about the signalization down in the south side of town and how many years we've been planning that back to when Furber development started and how the funds are raised for that, who pays into it, et cetera?
Absolutely. Be happy to give an overview of the Treadway signalization project. As you can see, the project is well underway. The light poles have been installed, or the signal poles have been installed, as well as the lights. And there's been a considerable amount of work performed underground. As a big component of the project is all of the electrical work that is necessary to support, ultimately energization of those signals. But the signalization project has a fairly long history, dating back to when the Furber Plaza was originally developed. The Furbers had set aside some funding to go towards future signalization of the intersection, not only of, well, at that time, it was primarily the Treadway and South Cloverdale Boulevard intersection. But since Furber came in, there was also additional improvements and development at the southeast corner of Santana and the Boulevard, where you have Taco Bell and the gas station and Starbucks. What's really odd about that particular intersection is, I'm sure all of you have experienced, is it's not a traditional four-way intersection where you have of the streets kind of aligned both, in a kind of a cross or perpendicular fashion. The intersection is offset, and further complicating that, there are some private driveways immediately south of Chevron. So you can imagine there's a lot of work that goes into designing a signalization for that type of intersection. Ultimately, we hired W-Trans, a traffic safety consultant, to develop a plan for the intersection, and the product of which is what you see today is the dual signalization, first of Santana and the Boulevard, and then Treadway. There was a plan for the signalization that was presented to council back in 2017. At the time, the council supported and gave the green light for staff to proceed with the project. Subsequent to the design work that was performed, the preliminary design work, the staff engaged the design firm to do the bid package and the bid documents to put the project out to bid, and also requested staff to prepare a funding plan for the project. The funding plan that the council approved was for just a little over $1.2 million. That $1.2 million consisted of various funds, including the funding that was put aside by Furbers when they developed. There was also a considerable amount of funding, just about $550,000, from what are referred to as transportation impact fees. The technical name we use at the city is thoroughfare impact fees, and those are fees that when new development comes in, they pay what we call their fair share of fees for their traffic impacts. So, for example, when Grocery Outlet came in, they contributed or had to pay traffic impact fees, which go into an impact fee account that then helps fund the improvements for the signals. Likewise, when Vine Ridge development came in, they also paid traffic impact fees. So in addition to the funds set aside by the Furbers, the traffic impact fees, the city also was able to obtain some grant funds These are referred to as Transportation Development Act funds to improve the bicycle lanes through the signalization, through the intersection area. Of course, the council wants to ensure that, bicyclists and pedestrians also have a safe mode of travel, in that highly traveled intersection. So there will be a number of improvements related to the bicycle path, as well as the sidewalks. There will be some modification of some of the areas where some of the large 18-wheelers currently park, that they will no longer be able to park in a certain stretch there, to ensure that the crosswalk has improved visibility for pedestrians. The last funding source that contributed to the funding plan for the project were what are called unspent bond proceeds. Those unspent bond proceeds were funds that council had set aside from our, I mentioned earlier, our former redevelopment area. So there was some small funds that had to be utilized for capital projects. And of course, this was, met the criteria for use of those bond funds. So that kind of rounded out the funding sources for the project. So thus far, we're kind of happy to report that there's no general fund monies that had to go into the project. It's all been paid for by more than half by development, and the other half by grants and unspent bond proceeds. And we're getting close to being able to finalize the project. There is a couple of pieces that we're working on with PG&E to make sure we are able to access the right power for the project. So there is a very detailed traffic report that was prepared by W-Trans, and I have a copy, and I'm happy to share that if there's an interest in reading more about the project, because it's over 50 pages. It's got a lot of details about all the turning movements and the design that what you're seeing when you drive through that area today.
And one of the things too, I'm sure there's some folks that are going to say, oh, why are you spending $1.2 million for a traffic light down there when you could be paving streets? But that is a restricted fund. When we collect those traffic impact fees, we can't use those for anything other than what the design purpose was. And just one more thing that's going to come with that, and I know Chief Ferguson might want to address it a little bit, is as you come out of the 7-Eleven parking lot, you will no longer be able to make that left-hand turn. And I believe there was a sign there at one time, no left turn. People are now going to have to exit onto Santana, that little side street, and then be able to make their left-hand turn. So the traffic patterns of that little shopping center are going to change quite a bit, as well as just that whole intersection. So
you're absolutely right, Councilmember Wolter. There will be what are referred to as some traffic delineators roughly in the middle of the intersection, separating the northbound from the southbound travel lanes, which will prevent cars, in theory, from making a southbound or left turn out of the gas station directly onto the boulevard. Because from a transportation safety perspective, that's considered, that's a design that is no longer recommended, because you have potential conflicts between vehicles. As you can imagine, folks are leaving the driveway from the gas station and Starbucks and Santana Drive, and then you have folks driving northbound on the boulevard while other cars are going south on the boulevard, and it just leads to a lot of conflicts, which in turn can generate traffic accidents. So the delineators will, in theory, are intended to prevent making those turns. But that's where the chief and the police department come in if folks want to decide otherwise. is enforcing that. But I think through education and public information, folks will make the right choices ultimately, and it should ultimately improve traffic safety in that intersection.
Well, especially with the development of that southwest portion of the city now, with the winery storage facility going in, proposed housing project, there's going to be more folks coming up to Furber Plaza and into the 7-Eleven and Starbucks, and getting our handle on how to control all of that traffic is definitely a challenge. But this has been in the works for years. When I first joined the council, we were talking about, someday putting a traffic light there. So, and that goes back to 2000. 1999, somewhere around there. So, well, thank you, David, for sharing that with us. Chief Ferguson, what's new in the Cloverdale PD?
Well, there's a lot going on. I'll start right off with what's clearly taking precedence, and that's what's happening across our nation here at the nation's capital, and the concerns with the upcoming inauguration about armed intruders and significant credible threats that the FBI is receiving from intel. And I don't know if anybody read the Press Democrat article recently where it discusses the FBI bulletin, where they've received some fairly significant credible threats regarding all 50 of our capitals and in each of the 50 states. And some of those threats have to deal with details of armed intruders doing similar acts that we all saw at our nation's capital. And they anticipate some of those things happening between January 16th and the 20th. So it's coming up soon. So as well as, again, more threats to the US Capitol on January between 17th and 20th. So these things are taken very seriously. We'll let you know locally, although we're far removed from our capital, it doesn't mean that we're not going to potentially see things in our county. So myself, as well as the other chiefs and the Chiefs Association, have been in discussions, and we certainly want to be prepared, and just like we had to with the other protests. Those did reach clear out here to Cloverdale, so we want to make sure that we're prepared in the event that happens, and be able to provide mutual aid in the event. I continually get situational awareness reports from FBI, so I'm regularly keeping on top of it. And so far to date, there's been nothing reported in Sonoma County, so we're hoping that that's going to remain that way. I think it was in the same article, or it's been in a couple times, the rash of thefts of these catalytic converters that are taking place across the county. You see there's quite a few that have been stolen. I will tell you that in Cloverdale here, we have only taken 2 reports of thefts of those. One was on the 5th and one was on the 7th. And the one that was on the 5th ended up getting that catalytic converter recovered after the apprehension of 2 individuals after a pursuit in a neighboring jurisdiction. So maybe this is a good time to say, and I know David owns one, if you own one of those, they do make devices called Cat Security that you can mount. It's not 100% deterrent, but it does delay the process for people who want to get that catalytic converter. And right now, it's about a 3-minute operation to get that off of a Toyota Prius. So, you can delay that process and hopefully kind of, I guess in a way, you could say deter them from spending that much time to remove this steel plate that you can mount. So if you own one of those, something to think about, because it's a fairly expensive repair. But nonetheless, we are continuing to be actively patrolling our neighborhoods. I can't specifically say we're going to everybody that owns a Prius because we don't know that, but we're keeping our eyes open and doing some extra late night patrols. Yesterday at the council meeting, I did address the annual report. That is something I'm in the process of working on for the year 2020. And in that, there is going to be some statistics. I brought this up last night at the council meeting because somebody did address homelessness and crimes. So, I wanted to make sure that it came across that, we do not just sit back and not take this seriously. Ever since I've been here, this has been a significant topic by multiple people in this community. And I have to be honest and say, I think we have made great strides here on doing our best that we can within the law. to curb a lot of the problems that we have. And I know I talked about statistics, and the reason I bring that up is because it's important to know changes that we have made and what we do. One of my standing orders here is, and has been since I got here, was to improve our visibility in the plaza. That seems to be one of the primary issues that is always being brought up. And I think on any given day, you can see that we've really done a lot to try to keep that a much cleaner, better place to be for the community. You know, just in this year, we have either gone there, done foot patrols, ped checks, contacted people 333 times last year. That was just our own going out, being proactive. And mind you, this was during the COVID, when we were really trying to, you know, reduce our exposure to public and still do our jobs. But, you know, out of those 333 occasions, 267 of those resulted in us contacting people, and as best as we could within the law, moving them along and trying to do our best to keep the area clear. So I want to just put that out there, that we're making great effort as best as we can to try to do that. And I want to add this to this part too. You know, there are a couple individuals that are regulars there, and there's a couple individuals that we get called on, and we go above and beyond to try to do what we can. And there's an individual down there now on 6 different occasions in 2020, and again in January this year, we have taken that person for a mental health evaluation. How they keep winding up back on our streets after 6 separate incidents is beyond me. And you can see what our challenge is, because it's not for lack of effort of making those happen. So ultimately what happens is, when we just see them right back and we realize that the mental health arena isn't working, unfortunately it leads us to the criminal aspect. And you hate to say that, but what's left when the person starts doing things that then now reach to a criminal level? And so we've made numerous arrests in that regard too. So I understand if people are concerned about the homeless situation. It's probably never going to go away. I will agree it's a regional approach that we need to take. And it's not just law enforcement. It's a much bigger picture, always about funding and financial. I'm very hopeful that the county's tax measure that passed will really get some of that exposure out here to Cloverdale. And I think we certainly could be lobbying for that. And that's what I'm hoping we'll do. And I will be personally working with mental health to try to figure out what is the solution if this individual doesn't qualify 6 different times. What is our solution? Because that's going to be key here as we move forward on these resources and what we can do. So I just wanted to put that out there. And if anybody was paying attention, they did hear about, and I'm careful, because when a member of the community reports all of the crime and pretty much attaches it to homeless and the thefts, I want to just let everybody know it is not all relative to just the homeless population. In fact, it's probably not a very high number, to be honest, that's attached to that. What you will find is significantly about 6 to 8 of our regulars in and out of the plaza throughout various different times. And that's where they're at for the most part. I won't say that isn't happening, but you know, I like to caution people who say that it's running rampant and it's directed strictly at homeless. So I just want to put that out there as well.
Those are difficult decisions, Chief, and I just want to say good job about your efforts.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Elevating it up to the criminal level is also, you know, it's a necessary action. And then the hope would be that once they're in the, you know, incarcerated, and that's a different method to them getting help. That would be the ideal, and that would be the approach that we would hope for. And again, for a lot of unknown reasons, things aren't happening the way we would hope. So,
well, I would like to address the one you bring up. And one of the challenges with criminal is COVID plays a big part of this, mind you. The jail's capacity is where it's, and they really want to reduce nonviolent crimes from being booked for not only population, but also exposure risks. So we have to deal with that. And some of the charges that we can arrest these folks for, they're not significant felonies. They're not violent felonies. At the most, they're fairly insignificant misdemeanors that A, jail doesn't want us to even bring them. B, most likely don't even get prosecuted. And this is ultimately our challenge, which I've addressed from the get-go. And COVID only made it even more difficult. So that's where we're at with that regard.
And Chief, if I can, just to add to your comments, and I think you provided a great overview. The issue with the enforcement perspective with respect to homelessness is it's very costly. It's not only costly on the jail side, but it takes away vital resources of our police department that now have to take a homeless person, down to the jail, and that means there's one less police officer, on the streets of Cloverdale while they're undertaking that effort. And of course, you always have the safety of our community in mind, but it does divert important resources, and it comes with a more significant cost that than early intervention. So as your city manager, that's something I'm very interested in, is what are those intervention methods that we can employ where we don't necessarily need to utilize our police department, because we really would like to see our police department focus more on the critical safety issues, public safety. But nonetheless, sometimes public safety intervention with homeless is needed, no question. But I always have the cost perspective in mind, in terms of what it's costing all of you as taxpayers to use those methodologies. So if we can work together as a community and figure out other options that might have better outcomes, I think it's going to be, we're all going to be better off because of it.
And hopefully with that Measure O passing, we will be able to get some funding up here in Cloverdale to help with the situation. And of course, whenever the county gives out funding, they also have strings attached. It'll be interesting to see how that develops. I received a question here in the chat. Any information on vaccines to Cloverdales for over 60? Chief David, have you heard anything about?
So I will just state that where we currently stand in the county's phase, those individuals would be in phase 1B, tier 1. And that was anticipated to begin on February 1st. And the only update that I have was that may be extended a little bit based on availability. But I think if I was reading something, and maybe David could correct me, was there something in the press Democrat today that was expediting that process for that group?
Yeah.
I reports that there's going to be expedited vaccine distribution, but we're being provided new information every day. The county is really challenged in their planning process to help distribute the vaccine. Where unfortunately, what I think is the critical issue is that we are only on target to get in the near term 3,500 additional vaccinations for our entire county beyond what we've received to date. And those 3,500 are being distributed, countywide, largely through the large healthcare providers. So, Sutter.
It's 11 o'clock.
And Kaiser, and then the remainder go to our federally qualified healthcare centers like Alexander Valley Wellness Center. And so it's incumbent upon each of us to really pay attention and contact our primary care physician as to when vaccines are going to be available. because it doesn't appear like the county is going to be the lead agency, so to speak, on distribution of vaccines. They're going to be doing more of the information campaign on and public campaign on why it's important to get vaccinated, but not necessarily having vaccines available for our community, unfortunately. So but again, information continues to develop every day, and we'll continue to track and monitor and do our best to convey the information back out to the community. And it's really vital to track the SoCo emergency website. There's a page dedicated to information about the vaccine process and see where we are in the phase and the tier, because that's where, depending on your status as an individual, whether you're an essential worker or in a particular age group, you're going to be prioritized to be in line to get the vaccine. And so that's really critical to kind of keep an eye on that, and contact and bug your doctor if I can give you, or your primary care physician if I can give you any advice.
Al?
Al, you had a question?
I just wanted to add to that. There was an announcement that went out yesterday that they were moving people 65 and older up in the tier process. My wife watches it every day. And she also contacts her pharmacist at Safeway to get the inside scoop on when things are happening. So just wanted to throw that out there.
Well, I guess I have a concern in the sense that, David, I think you said that there's 3,500 vials available. Well, what happens in 2 weeks when I have to get my second injection? What's the effect going to be on my body if I only get one of the injections? And then when it comes time for the second one, the vaccine isn't there. That's my big concern. But I guess somebody will answer that question eventually. And when they say they have 10,000 vaccines available, is it really 5,000 because they're holding that second one back for me later on down the road? Chief, you're nodding your head yes. Is that the case?
That has been my understanding, is that when you get that number, it's divided in half. So, how they regulate that, to answer your question, I don't know. Are you listed as you've done one and then you're due back up and that's put away for you? But I will say that is how that's done. It's divided in half when you get those numbers.
Right. And I'll concur with that, because my daughter is a healthcare worker, and that's how they did it with her. She gets the first shot. The second one is there for her when that time comes in a few more days.
Well, it's 11 o'clock, and if there's I see somebody just asked.
I just wanted to take back, and maybe I haven't attended the coffee with Mayor enough. I have attended a few times, and there was some round table sharing, which we had done at some other form meetings, but I found I really enjoyed this format of just getting updates on the city issues. And thank you, everyone.
Well, yeah, thank you all for attending, and please talk the meeting up. But before we go, I just want to make sure I give a big a round of applause to our Chamber of Commerce for everything that they've been doing to make this COVID-19 holiday be as successful as they have. With the Santa Claus riding through town, and Chief, I think you were involved with that, along with Mayor Turner. What a wonderful idea. The same with the Halloween decorations. So, give a shout out to the Chamber as much as you can for all that hard work, and all the organizations, the Senior Center, everyone is just pitching in. And that's what makes Cloverdale so unique. And just on a closing note, I don't know if I've mentioned before, but the little trailer that we had back behind City Hall has been removed. It was a modular unit that our planning department was housed in, and just due to the age and the condition of that facility, we had to get rid of it. So now what's on the drawing board here, and I'm hoping we get it sometime in 2021, and David and I am sure we'll be talking about it, is the Portland Loo, which is a permanent bathroom. It's got its name because they're up in Portland quite a bit. But it's a restroom that people can use. We can finally get rid of that porta potty at the end of Broad Street down here by the post office. It'll be controlled. It's right outside the police department. There'll be cameras on it. You'll be able to see people's feet underneath it. It's easy to clean, and I'm looking forward to having it. So anything else from anyone? Any plugs for any particular things that are going on that we should all know about? Well, I saw Councilmember Cruz come through the building a minute ago. I tried to get her to come in here with her mask on and say hello to everyone. I should say Vice Mayor Cruz. She had the opportunity last night to conduct the city council meeting, and what a wonderful job she did. So it's good to see her starting to step up there and run a couple of the council meetings. So with that being said, I'd like to say goodbye, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Really appreciate it.
Everybody, good to see you.
We'll see y'all. Have a good weekend.
You too.